This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 23rd of May, 2023 to be confirmed. Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that those minutes be taken as read.
The question that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 30th May 2023 to be deferred.
Move that the said minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour.
Based on information from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, there's need for the appointment, the nomination appointment of someone, of a member of this House to represent Barbados at the upcoming OACPS meeting. Honourable.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Honourable Member for St. James North be nominated as Barbados's representative at the OAS-CPS Parliamentary Assembly and the OACPS-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly.
The question is that the honourable member for St. James North be so nominated. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The honourable member for St. James North is hereby so appointed.
Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions. Papers. Mr. Swan.
Honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the annual report on audited financial statements of the Central Bank of Barbados for the year ending December 31st, 2022.
Government notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Supreme Court of Judicature Amendment Bill 2023, and I also beg to give notice of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, the compulsory acquisition by the state of a parcel of land situated at Harrison's Plantation in the parish of St. Lucie for a public purpose, namely education, economic and tourism development.
Private members' notices. Notices of questions. Reports from select committees. First reading of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Supreme Court of Judicature Amendment Bill 2023 be read a first time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statement by ministers. Congratulatory and arbitrary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Oral replies to questions. Notices of motions for adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day. Suspension.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 9, sir. on the supplementary order paper. Order number 9, in the name of the Honourable Minister, Housing and Lands, to move the passing of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, the compulsory acquisition by the state of parcels of land situated at Harson's Plantation in the parish of St. Lucie in this island for public purpose, namely education, economic, and tourism development.
Honourable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to introduce this resolution. But before I get into the resolution, Mr. Speaker, I want to offer my sincere condolences on behalf of my family and indeed my colleagues at the passing of your sister. We know that the exigencies of this operation, being a minister and an MP, prevent you sometimes from attending funeral services. But I assure you that you were with me in your prayers and with my family. And again, I ask that the family accept my apologies and the apologies of my colleagues for not attending yesterday's funeral.
Your kind words are
But I
truly
know some of
appreciated.
my colleagues were there, but I apologize for those who, based on the exigencies of their ministries, could not attend.
Noted and
I also wish to
appreciated.
go further into the country because I want also to offer my sincere condolences on the passing of a young lady from the Mount, the Eswick family. And again, based on the exigencies of the operation and based on the demands of the job, I could not attend the funeral service. Anyhow, my prayers are with the family, the Eswick family. So on behalf of my family and I, again, our sincere condolences. Mr. Speaker, now to the business of the day. This resolution pertains to the compulsory acquisition of some 36,517.3 square meters of land situated at Harrison's Plantation in St. Lucie for the public purposes of education, economic, and tourism development. But I like to record in acres because the average man in the country, relate to acres. And this acquisition is to be exact, 9.024 acres of land to be acquired at from Fairfield Investment Limited for the public purposes, I said, of education, economic, and tourism development. Mr. Speaker, let me take the chamber back to 2020, when the Ministry of Housing and Lands was approached by Invest Barbados regarding the possibility of having land made available near the University of the West Indies, Cavehill campus, a site owned by the National Housing Corporation, which adjoins a section of the University of the West Indies. And this piece of land was supposed to be leased to a developer to construct a dental school. But, Mr. Speaker, as a result of the height of the land of the proposed school, 6 to 8 stories, and the proximity to the highway, this project indeed did not materialize. But, Mr. Speaker, again in January of the year 2022, the Planning and Development Department advised the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance that planning permission had been granted back in September of the year 2021 to a landlord in St. Lucie at Friendly Hall for the change of use of that parcel of land from strictly residential to that to be used for a dental school, as well as residential use. And, Mr. Speaker, this discussion carried on to the year 2022, when the acting general manager of Columbia International College in Canada, made contact with the ministry with a view to obtain some 10 acres of land north of the Land Act Friendly Hall. But Mr. Speaker, BTII, Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., owns some 84 acres of land at Harrison's, adjoining, what's the name of the facility? Adjoining Harrison's Point facility. And that 74 acres of land, coupled with the 9 acres of land that we're here to acquire in this chamber today, will be the site for a dental school. And Mr. Speaker, BTIA has given its full commitment to making this project a reality by offering the land for sale to the developer, some 74 acres of land. Mr. Speaker, this proposed development for a dental school is multidimensional in nature, Mr. Speaker. And we are looking at a world-class dental school with state-of-the-art medical and dental equipment. And let me go back, though, Mr. Speaker, and allow you to know that at Harrison's plantation in St. Lucie, owned by Fairfield Investment Limited, there is some 280 acres of land in total. And Mr. Speaker, that's why when the Ministry of Housing looks at the availability of land for housing, the parish of St. Lucie features #1 in terms of land availability to construct housing. And while this land is owned by a private company, Fairfield Investment Inc., it is testimony to the richness of St. Lucie for development. And Mr. Speaker, we have forecast some 600 acres of land in St. Lucie that can be used for housing development. And we have started. At Coconut Hall, we have started some work. At Colleton in St. Lucie, we have started some work. And indeed, that parish of St. Lucie, the member for St. John is interrupting me, rightly so, to allow the chamber to know that he too has some land in St. John at Poole and in Tuz and at Vineyard, not at Vineyard, Messiah Street, Guinea Estate. So we will get to you, member for St. John, and we know that you're well endowed with land space too for housing, and we have started the process at Poole. Actually, foundations, as I stand here in the chamber, we are presently at foundation stage at Poole North, where we will be building some 201 houses in that parish. But Mr. Speaker, that brings me to the point that I want to make before I get into the meat of this presentation as it relates to the dental school. We came to this chamber over a year ago, and we said to the country that this government has set a target of 10,000 houses to build over a 5-year period, starting last year. And Mr. Speaker, while persons laugh at it and scoff at it, that is what this government is about. This government is not only about dreaming, but this government is about examining what are the needs of the people in this country. And if you travel the length and breadth across this country, you would recognize, if you ask the average person, even a little child at school, what is his greatest need? They will give you needs. They will say a job for their parents or family member, and then they will say a house. Probably not in that order, but they might say 1 and 2, a house first and then a job. So, Mr. Speaker, when we announced in this chamber, I think I did announce it, that this government intends to build 10,000 houses over a 5-year period. Person said I was dreaming. But what is a government if we cannot set ambitious targets? What is a government if we will continue to meander and stay in a spiral as it relates to housing in this country? And I say that because recognizing we have some 18,000 applicants at National Housing for houses. And as I speak presently, we are discussing the whole aspect of housing projects, with a view to get some more projects going within the next month to achieve our target for this year, which is 2,000 houses. So annually, if we achieve 2,000 houses, and of course we are behind now, Mr. Speaker, because last year, you know, the greatest or the most significant part of building a house is the infrastructure. So infrastructure takes you 3 to 6 months. And Mr. Speaker, you couldn't expect after we announced that we will build 10,000 houses that in the first year we would achieve the target, because we know how to get going. Nonetheless, we will make it up. And I am one who stand here supporting what I articulated over a year ago in this chamber. Because even if we fall short, and I don't think we will, we have to set ambitious targets. And we have to reduce that backlog of applications at National Housing that stands at 18,000 applicants, 8,000 of which are civil servants. And Mr. Speaker, alone, 10,000 houses will probably satisfy 80% of the 8,000 civil servants, because of course we have persons in the private sector. You know, we can't give all to the civil servants, even though a greater portion must be given to our civil servants, our nurses, our policemen, our teachers, our janitors, gas station attendants in the private sector. They want housing too. But Mr. Speaker, I digressed a bit, because the whole aspect of land availability in St. Lucie and persons thinking that St. Lucie is far. St. Lucie is not far. I worked in St. Lucie at a commercial enterprise, industrial plant, for close to 20 years. And I traveled from St. George to St. Lucie on a daily basis, and I enjoy that scenery. And there's no place in Barbados that is far. We leave our shores and we drive from New York to Jersey. We take hours, we drive from state to state, and we enjoy that. So to tell persons in this country, potential homeowners, that St. Lucie is far, that's not true. And what we're doing here today is testimony to the development that we will take to St. Lucie, to make St. Lucie, even though it is a very attractive place, even more attractive for persons to indeed seek a home in St. Lucie. So we are doing two things here today: articulating the land acquisition process that will give us the possibility of building a dental school, and we are also looking at development in St. Lucie that will drive home ownership in St. Lucie. So, Mr. Speaker, I know the member that sits over there, his heart is beating swiftly at this stage, because he knows very well. I don't think he expected me to spend so much time talking about St. Lucie, but I love that parish. I earned a living, and I was able to build a home from working honestly in St. Lucie, earning an honest dollar on a daily basis for close to 20 years. And I hold that parish dear to me and my family. That is what I want to say to you, member for St. Lucie. So, Mr. Speaker, the proposed development, when we acquire this 9.024 acres that will add to BTIA 74 acres, and if you do your math, 74 and 9, that's 83, just over 83 acres of land for a dental school. And this project intends to raise the level of dentistry and dental health and the knowledge in this country and even wider Caribbean. With this project, Mr. Speaker, the dentists will have the opportunity to specialize, and not only specialize, but to teach. It will enhance the profile of that industry not only in Barbados, but globally. And a world-class dental school with state-of-the-art medical and dental equipment will attract students, many students. A modern and digitized dental laboratory serving the Barbadian community, that too will be part of the project. Not only the state-of-the-art world-class dental school, but you have a modern and digitized dental laboratory serving this country as well as the rest of the Caribbean and the global marketplace, and focusing on areas such as manufacturing and the supply of dental products. So, Mr. Speaker, you will see the vast wisdom, not the vast wisdom, the wisdom, Mr. Speaker, in building a dental school. Industry member for St. Michael North, industry will get a boost. The supply of dental products, not only locally, but regionally and globally, we can begin to export. Barbados then becomes the hub and the center of excellence in dentistry, dentist laboratory equipment, and indeed supplying dental products. This proposed development would also see an oral pathology laboratory, an oral radiology center. It will have a 6-story student residence with several amenities, such as restaurant, laundry, gym, games room, convenience stores, and a hotel. So, Mr. Speaker, we are not only looking at dentistry, but we are focusing on educational tourism. Because with that dental school, the hotel will cater to the parents of the students and overseas patients and visiting faculty members who will stay there. This certainly will boost our economy. So as we speak to our dental school at Harrison's Plantation, land owned by BTII, land owned by Fairfield, investment that we are acquiring, we recognize that there's a sincere boost to tourism. There's also a sincere boost to our health sector, because here we are, member for St. Philip North. Here we are specializing in an area that is certainly seen as world-class. Because when you look at Canada, the Canadian economy back in 2018 boasts of international students that contributed some $21 billion to the Canadian economy. So international students that will come from all over the world to attend this dental school will boost our economy. And Mr. Speaker, this is all part of the thrust of this government. And when you look at the work this government has done since 2018 and the work we continue to do in terms of economic development, to put people back to work, to create growth in this country. And I want to recognize this work in a significant way, because we have to recognize where we came from prior to 2018, and we have to indeed think seriously about if we, as a citizen of this country, want to go back into those days of turmoil prior to 2018, into the doom days, the days when persons were sent home, the days when persons were unemployed, the days when persons could not put food on their table, the days when this country was borrowing money to pay salaries, the days when this country was printing money in this country to sustain its livelihood. We don't want to go back to those days. So, Mr. Speaker, this project that I'm speaking of, the investment that I will speak to later, I think it's some $57 million in investment in this country in a dental school, will certainly boost this economy. And we cannot in any way underscore the value of what we're doing here this morning. While it may be a land acquisition by the Ministry of Housing, and that's our role, utilizing the Land Acquisition Act, whichever act we use to make sure this is for a public purpose, for education, for tourism, and for health. This really starts with the Ministry of Housing, but the reality is this is a matter that will generate employment, create growth, educational tourism. There are several, boost industry, boost our healthcare sector, foster linkages between the University of the West Indies, student enrollment, and world-class, state-of-the-art technology in dentistry. That is what is coming to this country. And this project is intended to start this year. So don't think we are coming here utilizing the powers of the Land Acquisition Act to acquire land to sit down for 3 years, like a former government did when I sat over there. They acquired land, and the land sat idle for years on top of years. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, that's not what this government is about. They can call us hasty, but at the end of the day, we cannot play with the lives of the citizens of this country. We cannot play with our educational system. We cannot play with our country becoming world class. This is all part of our country becoming world class. So, Mr. Speaker, this facility is further proposed that a commercial retail facility will also be built on this site, including restaurants and a cafe, a food store, a pharmacy. But, Mr. Speaker, it is also this government's vision that this facility will also be accessible not only to persons who live on site and work on site, but also to the general public. That is what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, the investors for this development is known. And they operate one of the largest boarding schools in Canada, Columbia International College, which has an enrollment of some 1,800 international students. The developer, so we are associating with world class in an effort to ensure that we get the best dental school in this country. And the family, Mr. Speaker, they have access to a recruitment network that is second to none. Barbados stands to benefit, Mr. Speaker, from being able to tap into this network. And it also entails a partnership with a world-renowned dentist. I think the pronunciation is Dr. Daniel Zeither from the USA, and his faculty, Zeiter. He's world class, and he will be part of this. I spoke to him up to yesterday, and I felt honored to be associated with world class, so I can come here this morning to tell Barbados that this government is indeed on track to build and to construct its first dental school. It is estimated, Mr. Speaker, that this dental school will have an enrollment of some 400 international students. And this will increase to over 500 students by year 4. We start out with 400 and it will increase by 500 students in year 4 and 100 graduate students. Let's speak to staffing, Mr. Speaker. Let's speak to jobs, Mr. Speaker. You would have ancillary staff, administrative staff at this facility, technical staff, teaching staff, and the staff complement is estimated, Mr. Speaker, at some 500 staff members. Mr. Speaker, this land acquisition debate this morning is intended to create a buzz and some excitement among Barbadians. It is intended to create some excitement to students who aspire to become dentists and laboratory technicians. It is expected to create some excitement, Mr. Speaker, among the dentist profession in this country. That's what this is about this morning. This debate, Mr. Speaker, this morning is simply to tell our country that this government, we are not only building hotels, but we're investing in our future, our education, and education tourism will allow best practices to be shared, would allow active citizenship in this country, would allow community involvement in St. Lucie and indeed across the entire country. And Mr. Speaker, we know what happens when we host international conferences in this country. And this dental school will have a facility that will host international conferences in this country and what that does to our economy. So I am certain, Mr. Speaker, that those who are listening in the chamber this morning, they're getting the point. Barbados, this government is propelling this country on a growth path. The member for Christchurch, East Central, I want to thank you, sir, for the work you are doing. You're part of this. I am only standing as the Ministry of Housing, but Planning and Development and the Ministry of Finance and the member for St. Michael North Industry. I also spoke to the head of BADC, who's excited about the industrial prospect of this dental school and what indeed we can create the export potential and the world-class potential in that, with that state-of-the-art dental school. In industry, what it can do for our country, the whole aspect of creativity and innovation, the thrust. And we can't underscore, some may say this is a simple acquisition, but it's not so simple. It is beneficial to every single citizen in this country. Mr. Speaker, now let me mention a bit of the health aspect, because the relevance of good dental health, you know, we as men, we like to smile, and as politicians, we like to smile, but I am speaking to the average man, not just us in this chamber, male and female, the whole oral health, the importance of oral health. It has risen in years, over the most recent years, because researchers have discovered a connection between declining oral health and underlying systemic issues, the conditions. As it turns out, Mr. Speaker, it is shown that good oral hygiene offers more advantages than just beyond cavity prevention. Practicing good oral hygiene can maintain healthy balances between the species and that contains a number of bacteria. And Mr. Speaker, while I am not a doctor and I'm not a dentist, the research shows that there's a close link, correlation between heart disease and oral hygiene, and also diabetes. Do the research and you'll see the good doctor from St. Philip North. I am certain she can weigh in here as well. So, Mr. Speaker, there are tremendous benefits in terms of health care that this project can bring to this country, not only in development, but in oral hygiene and in helping us live a healthy lifestyle. I am certain that you will see more conferences and more consultation as we build this dental facility in St. Lucie. Mr. Speaker, let's speak to educational benefits. It is said, Mr. Speaker, that the number of students seeking to pursue studies outside of their home countries has been on an upward trajectory over the years. And there is a report called the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, which shows that the number of higher education students studying abroad was estimated at 5 million in the year 2017 and is projected to reach some 8 million by 2025. And this is according to the OECD report, which went on to further state that the global marketplace for tertiary education is likely to expand further as global demographic trends and a rising global middle class spur demand and spending on educational products and services. Mr. Speaker, we know very well, and every single member, or most members in here, are from humble origins. Parents who are average citizens, know a lot of wealth, but most of us in this chamber, and I can say when I look around, 99% of us in this chamber were able to utilize the educational system in this country and overseas to allow us to return to these shores and engage in active citizenship and contributing on a daily basis to this country's development. So it is not only the middle class that we expect to go to these schools, because I know very well, when I wanted to attend university to study engineering, my parents could not pay for it. They would have to go and do things that they're not trained to do, that are what we would call amoral, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, my parents went to the student revolving loan, and I got a loan that I paid back, unlike some who previously sat in this chamber who didn't pay back the loan. I paid back my loan. And I was able to function as an engineer for over 25 years in this country, primarily in the manufacturing sector as a mechanical engineer. I kept wheels turning. And when I look around at some of the buildings, I feel proud of myself from humble origins. So to say that only the middle class will benefit, that's not true. Because I know the average man in Ellerton who's doing exceptionally well at St. Luke's Brighton and who's doing exceptionally well at Ellerton Primary and St. George Primary and Workman's Primary and St. Jude's Primary. And if I go to St. Lucie at Half Moon Fort, the average student, I expect to see some of them enroll as well, because I know the parents will find the money when their child or children want to become dentists, world-class dentists. They will find the money. So, Mr. Speaker, and this will give them the opportunity to send their children to dental school in Barbados. So we are not only catering to international students, we are giving the ordinary man, member for St. Thomas, the opportunity to be associated with world class. The average man and woman, and I know you have a number of persons in St. Louis, in St. Thomas, the member for St. Philip West, who holds that very important portfolio for educating our children in this country. I know she's proud to see this resolution in here this morning because it gives her the opportunity as well to speak on some aspects of education as we seek to reform our educational system. And I want to thank you, member for St. Philip West, for the work that you are doing in ensuring that our educational system is also world class and it is modern. So, Mr. Speaker, this international school will also join other international institutions already established here, including the Ross University School of Medicine, the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. And this is a welcome addition to the educational landscape of this country. Mr. Speaker, there will also be derived benefits through linkages with the University of the West Indies. And let me speak to that. It is being proposed, Mr. Speaker, that first-year international dental students will be required to enroll for UWI medical courses. So again, some revenue generation for the University of the West Indies. And there must be some MOU, some partnership. I won't speak to that because I'll be previous and I'm not privileged to the actual MOU nor anything of that sort. Let me declare that, Mr. Speaker. But any good policy-driven person, whether you're a minister or you're a technocrat, you're an officer, would know that there have to be some linkage between the University of the West Indies and this new dental school. This could also, Mr. Speaker, create the opportunity for UWI to expand its medical program to accommodate the 100 international students from the dental school that will be required to enroll in their medical program each year. And as I mentioned earlier, this is revenue generation for the University of the West Indies. And I go further, Mr. Speaker, to speak to more synergies between this dental school and the University of the West Indies, because there's also the potential for the UWI medical students to be granted access to the laboratory. This would be state-of-the-art, and the anatomy digital laboratory available at the school. So we are bringing synergies within the medical school and also the dental school. And this type of interaction can greatly enrich learning, Mr. Speaker, and to add to cultural diversity and assist with networking and the strengthening of partnerships. And I mentioned that earlier because, Mr. Speaker, these international students will come from wide and far, similar to what we are seeing at Ross University, similar to what we are seeing at the American University of Barbados School of Medicine. And I had the privilege to attend one or two graduations at that school, the American University of Barbados School of Medicine, situated in Wildy. And when you speak to cultural diversity, you see it there. Students from the Americas, students from India, UAE, United Arab Emirates. You see students from the UK. And, Mr. Speaker, we must not underscore the value and the cultural diversity and the partnerships that can be formed with this creativity that we are seeing and with the influx of medical schools and dental schools. And Mr. Speaker, this might not be the last. I'm not privileged to know of any more at this stage, but I know there are more dental medical schools and hospitals, potential hospitals, knocking on our doors because people see Barbados as the best place to do business in the Caribbean. And we must not beat up our chest, but we must continue to work as ministers and as technocrats in the ministries to make Barbados the best place to do business, to work, to raise a family, to send school your children, and to live. And that's what this acquisition is about. This is about creating the environment and pushing frontiers that we never pushed before. Creating the environment for growth, pushing new frontiers of development, building out industry, building out the healthcare sector, diversifying the healthcare profession, bringing world-class and state-of-the-art facilities to this country. These 166 square miles, that is what this acquisition is about. This is not just about acquiring land to sit down, like when land was acquired back in 2010, or they sought to acquire land back in 2010. Those who sat on this side, we got on both sides. Now we occupy the entire chamber. Nothing to boast about, but that's how the people of this country saw it, and they wanted it to be, and that is how it is. I heard the Prime Minister this weekend send a message, focus on what you're supposed to do best and not focus on a job that you can't do. And we are focusing, she didn't use those words, but in essence, that is what she said, right, member, for St. Michael South. Do the job you have and not the job you want. When we were in opposition, we did the job we had. And our job was to get rid of the demons. And we did just that. We got rid of them. I make no apology for the word. You want to criticize my minister for saying people tell lies? If you tell a lie, you tell a lie. Member for St. Philip West. If you tell a lie, you tell a lie. You can't call a lie a red herring. You can't call a lie the truth. If you tell a lie on the member, you told a lie on her. And she has a right to say you told a lie on her, and I have a right to call them demons because they were destroying this country. And only demons do those things, remember, for Christchurch, East Central, and St. John. Only demons do those things. Destroy countries. You have to belong to the devil to do these things. I ain't going there. I'm not here to talk politics in this chamber today, but just to remind persons, this is a serious resolution, where we came from and where we are today. Look back 5 years ago, and you look at Barbados today and you compare it with now, and you go and look at the Hansard. You can come in, Mr. Speaker, members can look at the Hansard. They can get. I don't mean the members in this chamber. We can have a little script that persons can see the work that was done between 2008 and 2018. But Mr. Speaker, let me stay on course. The proposed dental school is pointing Barbados in a new direction and will be the first of its kind on the island and perhaps the region, providing a greatly needed service of enhancing dental care and assisting with addressing a myriad of dental-related ailments within the country. It is anticipated, Mr. Speaker, that this dental school will enhance the quality of dentistry being offered, and of course it will improve dental health care, and I said earlier, the knowledge in Barbados and the wider Caribbean. Barbados' reputation of being a major player in providing quality education among international communities this is what we're aspiring to, and we have started that journey. So the establishment of this dental school will go a long way, and it will further enhance Barbados' reputation of being the #1 in the Caribbean for providing quality education. Mr. Speaker, what is a country without growth? One may be able to look back some years to recognize a country without growth. But as we speak to you today, we don't want to remember a country without growth. We want to remember Barbados as we continue to grow this economy. And this proposed development project, Mr. Speaker, it offers the opportunity for considerable foreign investment in this country. And it is estimated at some US $57 million that will invest in the economy. This, Mr. Speaker, can not only enhance the country, but if we go closer to St. Lucie and rural Barbados, in those parishes of St. Andrew, St. Peter, St. Lucie, St. James, rural Barbados, St. Joseph, it has the potential and it will increase economic activity in those rural countries. This can enhance the money circulating in this economy, as well as increasing employment opportunities brought about by the many services that will need to be provided at this entire facility. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the dental laboratory providing dental products such as crowns and molds and implants, in addition to being supplied to the global market. And I spoke to that. We are creating an industry in the dental care section among the dental profession. These products, Mr. Speaker, will also be available locally. So we expect that our locals will benefit significantly in terms of health care. And it will also go a long way in saving foreign exchange, because it will reduce the need for us to go and buy these products overseas. This is significant. You could picture Barbados with a state-of-the-art dental school. Foreign exchange can be used otherwise to buy other products. So we now become a net exporter as opposed to a net importer of these products. Mr. Speaker, tourism development. I mentioned earlier the whole aspect of educational tourism. Some call it edu-tourism. I see that written places, edu-tourism. And the tourism development being proposed for the project will assist in diversifying the tourism product offering for this country. We can possibly branch out into conferences and convention tourism, as well as medical tourism. So we spoke about educational tourism, medical tourism, conferences, convention tourism. Mr. Speaker, this project, what I've articulated today, and I'm articulating as I am on my feet, is intended not only to boost this economy, but to diversify product offerings in industry and education. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to providing the lodging for the family of the students boarding at the school, I mentioned earlier the opportunity to host annual dental conferences. And at times, Mr. Speaker, when I wanted to relax, the family would use a guest house in St. Lucie because of the quiet nature. Looking for a place to relax with your family and recuperate and rest. But persons as well who would go to that dental school for surgery can indeed find a place to recuperate after surgery or other illnesses, because St. Lucie is a place that is very quiet. The only thing you hear in some parts of St. Lucie are cars traveling, cars passing the road. Put aside the one or two issues that you may find in certain, concentrated in one or two areas. St. Lucie provides a very good place to relax and recuperate after surgery or illnesses. So, Mr. Speaker, this resolution this morning that I stood here for the last 40 minutes and I spoke on is revolutionary, it is innovative, it is something new. We are pushing new frontiers in certain aspects of tourism, edu-tourism, diversifying the tourism product. $57.1 million in investment. The utilization of an aspect of 3% of the land space of Harrison's plantation, because of the 280 acres, we're only utilizing 9%. 9 acres. That is roughly about 3%. So the vast land space available in St. Lucie is right for tourism. It is right for industrial development. It is right for all aspects of industrial development. And Mr. Speaker, the lands at BTII, the 74 acres of land that will add to this 9 acres to provide this wonderful facility. And Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., Mr. Speaker, we must not underscore the work that they have been doing on behalf of this country, not only since 2018, but before. And before I sit, Mr. Speaker, I wish to mention some of the work that BTIA have done in this country. Constitution River, Phase 3. This project, Mr. Speaker, was funded by CDB, Caribbean Development Bank, some US $6.87 million in loan. And the estimated construction costs and consultancy costs for this project were some Barbados 13.4 million and 1.8 million respectively. But Mr. Speaker, why I mention that? This government, Mr. Speaker, has borrowed money for development in this country. We will continue, if the need be, to borrow money for development. And that's what you borrow money for, to develop. And of course, we know that over the years, the money that we borrowed were at a lower interest rate than what was previously borrowed. Sam Lawrence Castle, Mr. Speaker, Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. has overseen Barbados' $450 million redevelopment of the iconic Sam Lawrence Castle, a 422-room hotel development. And Mr. Speaker, this hotel resort will be managed by the Wyndham Hotel Group. And again, we are associating with world class, because this Wyndham Group has in its portfolio over 8,400 hotels with approximately room occupancy of 729,000. Again, Mr. Speaker, money was borrowed to construct this hotel. We didn't borrow money to do anything else but engage in development in this country. 170 million loan from the China Export-Import Bank. and US 31 million financing from Republic Bank. And this hotel has been built to AAA 5 Diamond standard. That's right, member for St. James Central. AAA 5 Diamond standard. So, Mr. Speaker, as I look at what has happened over the years since we came to office, the relocation of the geriatric hospital has started. The new headquarters for NCF soon to start. Our Treasury building rehabilitation soon to start. Harrison's Point Dental School, as I stand on my feet, soon to start. These are all developmental projects managed by Barbados Tourism and Investment Inc. And these are all projects, Mr. Speaker, that will give the average man the opportunity to earn a living, put bread on his or her table. These are projects, Mr. Speaker, that will generate employment. These are projects that will boost our foreign exchange earning, our foreign reserves. These are projects that will create significant employment. These are projects that will diversify our product offerings. And these are projects, Mr. Speaker, that will allow people to continue to recognize Barbados as a good place to do business, a good place to raise a family, a good place to work, and send school your children. And Mr. Speaker, the final project that I wish to mention that will be managed by the BTII is the whole town development project. And Mr. Speaker, this is a project that will see the relocation of the whole town civic center, where we have the police station, the post office, you know, where persons used to go to pay their driver's license. I'm not sure if they're going there now. But the relocation of the civic center to allow for the construction of a hotel, the development of whole town. And Mr. Speaker, the total project, we are looking at close to 172 million, and it will see the build of an 80-room hotel and 12 residential units. That's called the development, Mr. Speaker, and that's what you borrow money to do in a country as a government. You don't borrow the money or print money to pay salaries and pay your way out. You borrow to develop, because there is a return when you engage in such development. So, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, BTII and its role, of course, BTII will have a role to play in this project. With its 74 acres, but this resolution speaks to the acquisition of 9.024 acres at Harrison's Plantation, at Harrison's in St. Lucie, which is the property of Fairfield Investment Limited, to construct a dental school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this proposal to compulsorily acquire the 9.024 acres of land, or as we say, 3.65173 hectares of land at Harrison's Plantation, St. Lucie, for the public purposes of education and economic and tourism development. And Mr. Speaker, this resolution is in its proper form. It has been certified by the Attorney General and is in the order for introduction into Parliament. And with these remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this resolution do now pass.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise this morning to support this very important resolution not only as it relates to my constituency, the wonderful constituency of St. Lucie, but as it relates to Barbados. You would recall, Mr. Speaker, perhaps they say that Barbadians have short memory. But I wish to remind, and I'm sure all of us in this honorable chamber today would recall the time when nobody wanted to invest in Barbados. Coming to Barbados was to bring your money to spend it was a no-no. Coming to Barbados, perhaps to build anything, or even at the point for vacation, Mr. Speaker, was not one of the things that was paramount in the minds of the people, not only in the region, but outside of Barbados. Persons started going to places like Antigua, Guyana, St. Vincent, and so on to spend their vacation. But here we have before us this morning, Mr. Speaker, a resolution of land acquisition for an investor who has approached the government to spend some money in Barbados. If I was asked to write an essay, Mr. Speaker, about this and about what is happening in Barbados now, today, or since we assume the office to run the affairs of this country, I would simply entitle it, Investor Confidence is Here Again. Investor confidence is here again. I recall, Mr. Speaker, when one of the top companies in this country, and you're not permitted to call names in the House, and I will respect that, Mr. Speaker, because I do not want you to rule me out of order. A company moved their headquarters from Barbados, Mr. Speaker, and carried it elsewhere. I think it's Bermuda, and set up a company that for years had been domiciled in Barbados, a very reputable company, Mr. Speaker, that was domiciled here, moved their headquarters from Barbados because of the nonsense that was happening in terms of government and governance. Gross incompetence that was demonstrated caused a company to move out of Barbados and became domiciled elsewhere. But today, Mr. Speaker, we are here in this honorable House debating this resolution to bring that a company is interested, and very much so, in bringing a dental school, a new establishment in this country. And I can speak to the fact, Mr. Speaker, that when I was contacted about this investment in terms of what they wanted to do in Barbados, and I was invited, Mr. Speaker, to visit the site as well, and to meet with one of the investors, it was told to me that there was a decision between Barbados to bring the school to Barbados or Cayman Islands. And he is a Barbadian living in Canada right now, one of the investors. And he said, no way will I let this kind of investment go elsewhere. It must come to the country for which I belong, where I was bred and where I was born and bred, Mr. Speaker. And they made that, we had conversation, and I said, to the best of my knowledge, sir, I will give you the guidance that is required. I will tell you where you need to go, what you need to do, because I could not let this kind of investment bypass Barbados, and more so, and even so as well, the constituency of St. Lucie. But the most important, to be honest, Mr. Speaker, is that after years of doubt and people and lack of confidence in what is happening here, after those dreadful years, Mr. Speaker, the people of Barbados can now see not just where we have brought them from, where this administration has brought them from, but where this administration is going. And how we are working, and we are networking, we are speaking to people, we are speaking to investors, seeking to make Barbados a better place, a better country, seeking for people to bring their business to Barbados, a small, developing island state, Mr. Speaker. We already have 2 universities here in terms of from outside of the country. We're not talking right now about the University of the West Indies. We're talking about Ross University School of Medicine, and you will recall, Mr. Speaker, that the government, within approximately or less 2 years of coming to office, we were approached because that showed immediately there was renewed confidence in this economy, an economy that we had to bring back, and people don't like you to talk about this. They don't like you to talk about it because at the end of the day, people will want to forget. There are some persons who would want to forget and who would want to pollute the areas, Mr. Speaker, with their rhetoric and with their falsehoods and with their misleading information. But we have a duty to the people of Barbados to ever keep certain things before the people, while at the same time it must be a parallel track. There must be a parallel track, Mr. Speaker. And while we talk about where we have come from, we must also show where we're going, or while we talk about where we're going and what we're doing to enhance and to uplift Barbados, Mr. Speaker, we must always remind the people, because sometimes people get comfortable. They're so comfortable they forget where they were. And then because of they're comfortable, they may make mistakes in what they think and what they may plan to do. Because when you give room and space for lie and foolishness, I was often told as I grew up, Mr. Speaker, when the truth, when a lie is in town, in Bridgetown, the truth now leaving St. Lucie. And we cannot ever allow that to happen. When the lie is in town, if we sit back and relax and say, yes, we are doing well, and that is a fact, we may be doing well, but we must also and always be able to conquer and to show persons, Mr. Speaker, what is happening in this country and where we come from, reminding them never to go back to those days of high incompetence. People didn't know what it was. As a matter of fact, when people didn't care. But this government, a caring administration, Mr. Speaker, always looking out for the well-being of the people of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, and looking to bring investment to this country. And as people, as persons, as businesses, and different institutions and agencies seek to do business with Barbados, Mr. Speaker, we will do our best to accommodate. It doesn't mean that we will sell our soul, because that is the next thing that you will hear them piloting on the airwaves too. We will not sell our soul, but we will do right by the people of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, carefully dotting all the I's and crossing the T's, but giving opportunity for investment, creating growth, creating jobs, Mr. Speaker. It will derive when this resolution is passed and this acquisition takes place. It paves the way, Mr. Speaker, for one of the colleges, schools. I met, Mr. Speaker, and I will say I would have met the investors, I would have met in the brief, I would have met the primary investor, Mr. Speaker, if I may call his name, Mr. Chan, and we had conversation, we had discussion. And the Dental Association, the dentists in Barbados, we met with them as well, Mr. Speaker, and they are excited. They are happy for this investment, and it has been given the green light by them when we spoke, Mr. Speaker, at that meeting. This is what it is all about. This is what it is all about, Mr. Speaker, in moving forward a country. Moving forward a country, taking it to the next level. We do not want, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, we know that we are a small country, but a small country that can do and is doing great things and large things, Mr. Speaker, on the world stage. Mr. Speaker, sir, I recall and I remind the persons in the hearing of my voice today, Mr. Speaker, there were times now, with respect to the constituency of St. Lucie, and I divert to make this point and make it absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker. After 24 years with the last MP and 18 years with an MP before him, there's nothing to show really in St. Lucie. And I pause to thank the wonderful people of St. Lucie, my constituents, for giving me the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to serve them for the last 5 years, last Thursday, for the last 5 years, Mr. Speaker. And for showing them what representation means and what proper representation and progress is, Mr. Speaker. You must, of course, be aware, and what I did as a member of Parliament, because as I said, you cannot and you should not just leave it and believe that people know. You must put the record before them and keep your record before them. And I did a post, Mr. Speaker, on my social media showing them what had been done for the people of St. Lucie since they put their faith in me, and they put their confidence in me, just like this investor has put his confidence in Barbados to handle their affairs. Mr. Speaker, one person said to me, you have been doing a lot of what the government has been doing, a lot of hard work. You've come along, we've never seen such in not just the constituency, but against odds and a lot of adversity. The government has been able to rise above the occasion and pilot the ship of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, through choppy seas. This resolution before us today shows us that that is the route the government will continue to take, the trajectory that we're on as we seek to bring more and more investment into the country. I want to remind you, Mr. Speaker, and those here present and those listening to this debate, but sadly so, but I have to. You recall some years ago, a former prime minister, a former late prime minister, rose, Mr. Speaker, from his sick bed, Honourable Member for St. Michael West, from his sick bed, and traveled to St. Lucie, a place called Pickering, Honourable Member for St. James Central. And broke ground for what was called this massive project, Mr. Speaker. I can take you to Pickering now. It is no further now, and it was then. Same thing, Mr. Speaker. And I was very, very careful to point out and to say to these investors, as I gave them the direction and the route they should go to get this project come to light, it is not about coming somewhere and talking and making promises, but we take people at their word and said, yes, there was this plan, but we ought to be sure, and having with all that we have done and all that has happened over the past months since we spoke, Mr. Speaker, this project is headed in the right direction and we are moving forward. So this is unlike Pickering. I want to make that absolutely clear, because those who seek to detract and distract and to pull down the government will tell you they're not going to remember what happened back then, but they will come to tell you, they will come to tell us, Mr. Speaker, that it is red herring and it is talk and all of that. But as long as I am the member, the people of St. Lucie allow me to represent them, Mr. Speaker, I am going to pursue all sorts of development, not just in St. Lucie, but persons who want to invest across Barbados. If they talk to me, Mr. Speaker, I will give them the right direction, the right guidance, where to go, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that this country receives what that people want to invest in us, and that we uplift Barbados, Mr. Speaker. Because the detractors, they're on the loose, Mr. Speaker. They're wild. Running wild, Mr. Speaker, but we got to stop them in their tracks. Because we don't come with pie-in-the-sky projects, Mr. Speaker. We come with projects that are viable, and projects that will uplift Barbados, and projects that will bring benefit to the people of Barbados, irrespective of where they are, whether they're in St. Lucie, whether they're, because this is not just just about St. Lucie, because benefits will be down to all Barbadians. What I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, we don't have everything that anybody need in St. Lucie. If we did, Mr. Speaker, we would move ourselves, detach ourselves from Barbados, and we will become our own republic. But we belong to a good country, Mr. Speaker, and it's our intention to work as we have been doing to uplift Barbados. We are part of a country, so it's not just about us. It is about what will happen and how this country will benefit at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker. When you have an investor, the honourable member for St. George South talked about the various elements, Mr. Speaker, the various components of tourism that this project will bring. Education tourism, Mr. Speaker, medical tourism. And when those students, when that school is established, Mr. Speaker, and it is promised that you would have enrollment of about 400 per students on a yearly basis, Mr. Speaker. You know what benefit that is to a country, to its foreign exchange, Mr. Speaker? What benefit that is in the areas, in communities across Barbados, because they're not just going to come, Mr. Speaker, and stay in a hotel. They're going to want to go to the beach, so the beach vendors will get a little piece of the change. Because they want to experience Belgian food, so even though there's a restaurant as part of the plan, they ain't gonna eat from a restaurant every day because you want to come outside the compound and see what's going on. You want to go in, all these things. You want to go, Mr. Speaker, in Whole Town by one of the business places in Whole Town. You want to do a little shopping, Mr. Speaker, from time to time to get a piece of Barbados. And will not be in a short period of a 2-week period coming for a vacation or 10 days or anything like that. Mr. Speaker, because they're being educated here, Mr. Speaker, they will be here for a little while. So you got education tourism, Mr. Speaker. You got medical tourism. All these aspects. We talk about restaurants will benefit. Restaurants will benefit, Mr. Speaker. This facility that will be built, it will make available. There will be manufacture of dental products and such like. And I'm not a dentist. I'm not a doctor. I see the honourable member for St. Philip North listening attentively, Mr. Speaker, and she can expound on this more than I can. Because I'm sure that in her study in the field of medicine, Mr. Speaker, she would have done a whole cross-section of things. And my friend, the honourable member for Christchurch West Central, he's not a doctor, but he's a scientist. But he had a pharmacy, because a pharmacy is also in the works. A pharmacy is also in the works, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when an investor seeks to bring a full investment to a country, the Honourable Minister indicated the quantum. I have spoken, and where you may start at 50 or 150 million US, it can go upwards, Mr. Speaker. It can go upwards as they seek to add value to the facility and to bring greater benefits for the people who will occupy the facility and also the people in the communities around the facility and also in Barbados to a wider extent, Mr. Speaker. And that is absolutely important. So this government is not sitting down waiting, or when people criticize, or this government running with cap. We didn't run to these people. They came to us. They came to us, Mr. Speaker, had the various meetings because they saw that as they wanted to have this facility, they trusted and they were confident that Barbados could give them what they need. They could get a return on investment because the economy as well was on a trajectory, Mr. Speaker, that would lift and they will meet what they need, the criteria that they would have had, Mr. Speaker. The economy is going well. So we don't mind the detractors and those persons who will seek to share the misinformation, Mr. Speaker. Those persons who would want to, you may be attacking a party, but this is not about the BLP, Mr. Speaker. This is about the people of Barbados. That is what we were elected for, to govern, Mr. Speaker. We were elected, Mr. Speaker, to uplift this country. When we talk about foreign exchange, which we need, we came down, Mr. Speaker, at that time to about 2 weeks, close to 2 weeks in foreign exchange. We are much higher than that now, Mr. Speaker. And this project, once this school is built and occupied, Mr. Speaker, it will take us a long way into maintaining where we are now and probably take us even further in terms of our foreign exchange component and what we need to have to run this country efficiently and properly, Mr. Speaker. I say today to this Honourable House, we are in good hands. And in the book of Nehemiah, when the Sanballats and the Tobias, when the wall was broken down, Mr. Speaker, we came to a country where the wall was broken down, not just broken down, cast aside. You nearly couldn't even find a brick, Mr. Speaker, that had the wall. But we came as a government. And now when the Sanballats and the Tobias of today look at us and they begin to criticize, I say to the government, you are doing a good work, of which I'm proud to be a part, by the way. You are doing a good work, and you cannot come down. Do not be distracted or detracted with all whatever they put before us. The Honourable Member for St. Michael South, Mr. Speaker, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch East brought two good pieces of legislation, Mr. Speaker, which is needed in this country. And I could only put it down to two things: either mischief, or they don't know better, or they don't understand legislation. They don't understand how to run a country. They don't understand what is required, Mr. Speaker. I could only put it down to that, because nobody in their right mind, Mr. Speaker, and you are not saying that that everything that we may bring is perfect. But the fact, Mr. Speaker, that we have brought it, and the fact that we have sent that legislation now to a select committee where we can dialogue with more organizations and the people can have a say, Mr. Speaker. The people can have a say. So they criticize every single thing that you bring to the benefit, that will benefit the people of Barbados. And I am waiting to hear with this project what the criticism will be. And I heard the Honourable Member for St. James Central say over the weekend, our voices have got to be heard, Mr. Speaker, to tell the story of what this administration has been doing in Barbados. And I will say, my voice for sure will be heard, Mr. Speaker, more than it has been. Because if we, as I said to you, if you let the lie get to town, and the truth in St. Lucie, you're going to got problems pulling it back. You're going to got problems, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that when you sit in the other place, another place, Mr. Speaker, you do what you have to do without fear or favor because you cannot allow nonsense to happen. You fight in the defense of people. We are fighting, Mr. Speaker, in the defense of Barbados. And therefore, I want to commend this resolution, of course, to the House. I want to congratulate the Honourable Minister for bringing it to the House. And I will support it. And any other resolution or bill, Mr. Speaker, that comes to this honourable chamber to bring benefit and to bring upliftment and to bring forward mobility to Barbados' economic activity and so on. Mr. Speaker, I support this resolution wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will not be long for those of you who try to get out before me. Age is a bitch, as they say, and forgive me for that statement. I really had no intention to speak today, but I was called out from the Honourable Member for St. Lucie, as well as the Honourable Member for St. George South. So I have about maybe 5 minutes of your time to be occupied. I have no issues with the bill. I just want to make a few points in support of it mainly. People seem to forget the importance of dentistry. A lot of people in Barbados and beyond figure that dentistry is about looking good, your teeth looking good and bright and white and your mouth smelling good, but it goes beyond this. And we all know this by now with the AVA, the NCD conversation and so on. Dental hygiene is important in many instances. A healthy mouth often leads to a healthy body. And I speak about heart issues that are associated with poor dental hygiene and everything. I'm happy that this dental school will be coming to Barbados, but I just want to bring a few issues or comments to the fore. And I wish that the needs of Barbados are being borne in mind with the advent of this dental school. Yes, we have a few dentists here, and including the polyclinic, but the need for volunteerism is really critical in Barbados. I can only hope that this dental school will bring it. Yes, we have a polyclinic that polyclinics really, that service children to almost the fullest extent, and also some cases in the adult population. Unfortunately, the adult population is limited in what we can offer to individuals in that maybe cleanings and extractions. But this world, including Barbados, has gone way beyond extractions for adults. They know should be in the business of saving teeth. And that is one thing that we lack in the polyclinic arena. I hope that this dental school can add to the outfitting of the polyclinic. Our Honourable Prime Minister often says, we offer people things, what do we get out of it? And this is one time I can agree with her. What do we get out of it? Is it that they will come and help us to outfit our dental areas in the clinics? We're in badly need of personnel. We're in need of equipment, and I'm hoping that that is borne in mind when this dental school comes. The polyclinics are really, really begging for staff from every level, dentists, hygienists, technicians, And once upon a time, courses used to be offered on island, but they're not now. So I'm hoping that that's all inclusive for us, that these people can be trained in the appropriate areas that are in need. Yes, there are dentists out there that can volunteer, but they themselves are having issues, and they want to address one of them now. For a few years, before it was even in this area, dentists have been asking that their importation of equipment be looked at in terms of concessions, in terms of making the process easier. And in their minds, it seems to be, I had conversations with them, it seems to be a little more difficult than it used to in terms of getting their equipment out. I suspect if that were made a little bit easier, we will see them volunteering more within the public sector. I expect that to happen. But there are areas as well as they go on that need outfitting. Orthodontics is one area that we do not offer in the public sector. All of you, or many of you in here, will know that orthodontic treatment runs in the thousands of dollars for a child. And we are talking about $9, $10, $11, $12,000 per treatment per individual, including children. I would like that looked at. I think the dental schools should focus on, apart from their own use and the international community coming on board and everything, what the needs are in our island. Orthodontics, people think is a simple thing in terms of you get it or you don't get it. But oftentimes orthodontics is important in terms of getting speech correct, in terms of self-esteem for children, and nobody is as hard on a child as another child. And these are things that you have to live with. A child with crooked teeth, a lot of things come on that. Apart from, as I said, speech, the shape of the face, self-esteem issues where people don't want to smile anymore. And you can understand we are now facing an epidemic of depression and other mental issues. We don't want that to be added. So if that could be borne in mind in terms of offering orthodontic treatment, implants is another area. Implants is not just for looking pretty. Those of you who are familiar with implants or had a conversation with any dentist on island, implants replace teeth, yes, obviously, but there are reasons to replace teeth. In other words, if you don't have opposing teeth, they tend to grow longer than they should. So things like implants are important. We have moved away from just extracting teeth and calling it a day. We have progressed to these things. And the private dentists are offering, but they're asking that some concessions or ease of transactions be instituted there. And we expect that a university on island would give back to the community. Years ago, there was one near to where I live, the Baptist College. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. And they literally offered free dental care to the community. All class that were appropriate at that time. Fillings, extractions, cleanings, everything. And they also had a lot of community outreach within the schools, within the churches, in terms of screening. And I'm hoping that we get a little bit back from this dental school by way of contributing to the community. So then there really needs to be a push forward in the public sector in where we're going in dentistry. But my pet is the orthodontic treatment. Almost everything else is available to the general public, but orthodontic treatment is not. It's not an easy field. Right now we are island-wide. I think there are no more than maybe 3 orthodontic dentists on island, none within the public service. Right, all dental schools, as I think I was alluding to before, at least the ones I know of, offer care within their environs at low or no cost to the population, and I am expecting to see that as well. Training the staff, as I brought up before, we need technicians. We need technicians a lot within the polyclinics. There are hygienists that can do a lot of what dentists, not all, but a lot of what dentists have done. We need help in terms of education of the public by way of, and the dentists are doing their part, the local dentists that we have. We need input by way of educating the public on the importance of good dental hygiene and good dental care. And as I said, I wasn't taking too long. The only thing I want to caution is, and we have seen it in the medical fraternity, and I suspect in yours, Mr. Speaker, that we have been seeing too many individuals being enrolled in programs, too many to suit the country. I am hoping that that does not happen in this case, because obviously I'm hoping that there will be spaces for our local students to take part. So my hope is that they have a survey of the country and the country's needs, so that we wouldn't end up like how the doctors ended up with several interns finishing their internship and are basically, some are unemployed, or some had to leave the country, some had to tack on to practices at minimal cost value to them. So that is where I leave you here, just to be cautious on the numbers that they will be putting out per year for our Barbadian public. And that is my small input, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your time.
Honourable Member St. James Central.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to share a perspective on this, what I think consider to be a very important matter. And I want, Mr. Speaker, to begin by saying to you candidly that I only really wish to address 3 or 4 areas of concern. The first, Mr. Speaker, probably should be captured by congratulating the Honourable Minister who piloted this resolution of land acquisition under Chapter 288 of the Laws of Barbados relating to Harrison's Plantation in St. Lucie for the construction of the dental school and the public purpose, sir, of education and tourism. And Mr. Speaker, as I congratulate that honourable member, let me also share those sentiments with respect to the honourable member for St. Lucie, who is the parliamentary representative in question, thank you, and who obviously would have been tempted but did not succumb to the temptation to gild the lily with respect to this resolution, sir, not to indulge himself in unnecessary embellishment of all that this could do, but rather, sir, to cut a very sharp contrast, which I think takes me to the gravamen of the first point I want to make on this matter, and that is, sir, the question of political integrity. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was part of the Parliament of Barbados 13 years ago. I don't want to say 13 years ago today, but it was 13 years ago this month, when in the month of June in 2010, the late honourable member for St. John, who was Prime Minister of Barbados, would have turned soil at Pickering. I believe it is correct to say, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member for St. Lucie alluded in his speech to that very sordid part, that sordid and unfortunate chapter of the history of this country. That is why, sir, I use this opportunity as we speak about investment in St. Lucie, as we speak by extension of investment in rural Barbados, sir, that we speak to the question of political integrity. Because one of the most dangerous things that we can do in this country, in my estimation, sir, is that we play games with the ambitions, with the expectations, with the minds, with the sentiments of the people of this country. And those ambitions, sir, are very often very legitimate ambitions. And I will elaborate on this as I go on. But suffice it to say that it is the most rural part of rural Barbados. It is arguably, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I think the honourable member has made the point already, arguably the most underdeveloped part of rural Barbados. Its citizens, its residents cry out, sir, for their fair share of economic and commercial investment. And Mr. Speaker, sir, what transpired under the last administration was the unpardonable sin led by he who led them all, sir, and occupied the position of Prime Minister of this country, to go to St. Lucie and to proclaim a 750 million United States dollars investment, which, sir, had no concrete financial information attached to it, which 13 years later has not come to pass, but which, sir, obviously heightened the expectations of the public, quickened the pulse of the residents, sir. Were we not in this place, I would suggest to you, sir, that it is almost, sir, comparable to making promises of a social nature that you are incompetent and incapable of delivering. But that is for another time and another place. Mr. Speaker, sir, that project threatened to offer to St. Lucie much-needed housing. That project threatened, Mr. Speaker, sir, to bring a town centre to the Pickering area. That project, Mr. Speaker, sir, threatened to bring a 200-room hotel to the people of St. Lucie. It threatened, sir, a daycare centre, again, much needed. It threatened, Mr. Speaker, sir, the construction of a primary school for 350 pupils of the parish of St. Lucie. And it promised or threatened, sir, a bus terminal. All those things at face value are desirable, Mr. Speaker. But when you go to the public with something akin to larceny in your heart, to misrepresent fact, when there is no capacity whatsoever to deliver, Mr. Speaker, it does a dangerous thing to our democracy. It destroys the fabric of trust upon which the social contract of governance must rest. And in my respectful submission, sir, it is one of the most unforgivable parts, one of the most unforgivable chapters of the life of that last administration. So here we are today, Mr. Speaker, doing right by the good people of the most northern part of this island. It brings me to the second point I want to make to this House, sir. That the question of the need, more generally, above and beyond just St. Lucie, for us to have serious discussions about town planning. It is not the sexiest of topics by any stretch of the imagination. It is not, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you ask the average person who takes an interest, howsoever cursory, in public affairs, it is not likely to be the first utterance out of their mouth that town planning in Barbados is something about which we should long have been paying close attention and about which we need to continue to pay closer and closer attention. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to respectfully submit to you that it is an inescapable part of the developmental discussion in this country. Not only physical and infrastructural development, Mr. Speaker, sir, but it is also part of the developmental discussion we have to have if we want a society, sir, that is balanced in terms of opportunities for all of our people and, sir, opportunities of a gender-based nature so that our women in particular are in a position to have equality of access to opportunities, especially of employment. And I'm going to speak a little bit to that. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefits of having a discussion of this nature are to be found, for example, in the question of the employment opportunities. We can't have a Barbados, sir, where the vast majority of construction and then the vast majority of work generated by the construction effort is to be found in the urban corridor of this country. For those who have not studied it, the urban corridor, perhaps, sir, would run from just before you get to Hold Down, let us say Paynes Bay in my constituency, and it would go all through Bridgetown, sir, right along the south coast, all the way up to past Oistins, where you get to Pegwell. That is what we call the urban corridor in Barbados. It is heavily saturated, sir, and has been heavily saturated by a variety of forms of investment throughout the years. From the time we were independent, that is what we did. And we did it, sir, in the most curious of ways, because we did it on both sides of the road, so that we created yet another problem whereby now, in this generation, access to some basic amenities like getting to a beach in the country of your birth becomes a burden for people who live in various parts of this coastal district I referred to just now as the urban corridor. And Mr. Speaker, sir, those of us who have to labor with this difficulty because of overdevelopment on the coastline of the parish of St. James understand it well. And it is also a problem, might I add, Mr. Speaker, sir, for some folks in Christchurch as well. No, sir. As a result of the investment, there obviously then becomes opportunities for work. And what we do by having all of the vast preponderance of investment taking place within a very narrow and limited part of Barbados' land space, sir, is that you then have a pull factor, bringing people from all around this island into crowded, urban, already over densely populated urban settings, such as the constituency you represent, sir, the constituency of the city of Bridgetown, and so many others in St. Michael. No wonder it is that in the parish of St. Michael, sir, you have how many constituencies? 11. 11 constituencies in the parish of St. Michael and an island of 11 parishes. It tells you a lot, sir, about how we have allowed our town planning to unfold without, sir, pausing to reflect and to take stock of where we are and maybe to seek to alter the developmental vision of the country. I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, sir, that perhaps that time has come. And I believe that I share that developmental concern, sir, with the Honourable Prime Minister of Barbados and with the very overwhelming majority of members of this government. Mr. Speaker, sir, the other benefit which we can have as a result of a discussion of this nature, sir, turns on the diversification and the development of rural communities. I don't think that one has to think long and hard about it. I have heard some of the most eloquent submissions made by the Honourable Member for St. Thomas. I could have made them myself. My parish, my constituency, sir, is half urban and half rural. Part of it is in the parish of St. Thomas. I think in particular, Mr. Speaker, sir, of one of the most disgraceful atrocities confronting not just the people of St. Thomas, but confronting the tourism sector in this country, which is really called Seaview Road, as you leave St. Thomas Parish Church and go down to Whole Town. It will soon, sir, become impossible. It will soon, sir, become impassable. But then the worst of the worst, we live in a country, sir, where we have so focused on the urban corridor that we have now started to shoot our vital tourism sector in the foot. So that when you hear the member for St. Thomas speak, she speaks not only about the parish of St. Thomas and the people who she represents, and properly so, but she's also speaking to us, sir, sending a shot across the bow with respect to our tourism product. It is a fact that one of the hardest places to reach in Barbados, coming from any angle, is Harrison's Cave. Yet, curiously, Harrison's Cave, Mr. Speaker, is that which we want all visitors to this country to experience. It is a fact that there are tour bus companies who have refused to take tours through parts of rural Barbados. That has impacted not only St. Thomas, but also the constituency of St. John, and in particular in the area of Bath, Mr. Speaker. And we will go as a party to have face-to-face candid discussions with the people of St. John tonight. But the reality is, sir, that I mark my words, bet your bottom dollar, that the state of play with respect to road access will be part of the discussion. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefit of having a serious national discourse on the need for us to rethink and to re-strategize in our developmental vision, sir, and our planning vision, sir, is manifested in these opportunities. I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, even beyond that, however, is the need to broaden the base of commercial development and to reduce concentration of commercial investment in the urban corridor. Commercial investment, Mr. Speaker, anywhere in the world, is an opportunity for wealth to be generated. We can't have the over-generation of wealth in one part of Barbados and virtually none elsewhere. That is the danger we run. We risk. We must have a more balanced, on a small island, sir, a more balanced opportunity for poor people, as a former Prime Minister of this country from the North would have said, for poor people to stop being poor. And that means, sir, that there has to be opportunities for the investment expressed by the interest in investment expressed by potential investors in this country, whether those are homegrown Barbadians or people coming from overseas, as we would say, over and away. Mr. Speaker, sir, there has to be opportunity across this island. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the challenge we face is how do we accommodate that level of demand, this new level of interest, because happily for this country, we are past the lost decade that we had to endure between 2008 and 2018. But we can't just simply rest on laurels and say, well, we are past the lost decade, all is well. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, the mere fact that we are now attracting so much attention internationally, the mere fact that our Prime Minister is treated as one of the leaders on the global stage wherever she goes, the mere fact that that level of attention she brings herself, sir, translates into an advertisement, a walking, talking, breathing advertisement for this country, Barbados. The mere fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, that our agricultural product is now becoming transnational. The mere fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we have happily the best tourism product to be found in CARICOM. The mere fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can go on and on. These things, therefore, mean that more people take an interest in our country, more people want to be here by way of making investment. Is Barbados to be a place where they will come to live, where they will come to work, where they will come to recreate themselves, where they will come to make more money, provide opportunities for all of our constituents, sir, to be employed. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to accommodate that new demand. And if you look at the urban corridor that I just described to you, there are very few green fields to be found, very few new places of investment. I did not realize as I spoke, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the member for St. Michael's South Central, who sits immediately behind me, was in the chamber. And may I say to you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that from the very get-go in this administration's life 5 years ago, that honourable member was part of the cabinet of Barbados and would have had direct responsibility for helping to shape the way forward, helping us to navigate our way forward, sir, with respect to some of the issues that I am speaking to. And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we can't speak to these issues without asking the country now to shift its gaze towards not only the opportunities and the potential benefits, but to shift its gaze, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the challenges and the impediments that have been in our way. One of them, happily, has been corrected already by the passage by this government of a new town country planning legislation. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the longest while, we tied our hands together behind our back and sought to fight with the rest of the world, compete with the rest of the world as equals, but we are hobbled nonetheless by virtue of having a town country planning legislation that did not allow us on this small island to make the maximum use of vertical build. So we're telling people, come here and invest in Barbados and build hotels. Welcome. Because this is the main artery of economic activity of the country. But at the same time, the hotel can't go more than 3 to 5 stories. But if you go anywhere else in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, you are seeing hotels at 17 stories and 15 stories and so on. That is how we went about doing this thing. Now, while the legislation has assisted us tremendously by giving us now, because as I said, we have few new areas where you can go. You want to put up a hotel on the coast of Barbados, Mr. Speaker, on the south coast, or on the west coast of Barbados. There are not many places that you could find. The other problem that we've had, and I believe that it's true to say that you yourself would have recognized this, sir, is that we have taken prime commercial opportunity away from our people, by making sure that there's a place to park a car. Because only according to the thinking of this country, sir, the only place that you can have a multi-story car park is down here in Bridgetown. So you go to the airport and there's not enough room to park a car. There are no situations, sir, where people park their car to go into the airport. They park the car out on the main highway, sir. It is a fact. Bridgetown Harbor, you park the car all up Harbor Road when the tourist ships are in. No room in the inn or in the port, sir. And it seems as though forever we are prepared to say that it is satisfactory that you have a massive car park next to the beach. And there's nothing wrong with having a car park, sir. But let us carry car park a little bit higher so we have a little bit room for commercial investment that we can put people to work. That those people from your constituency and mine, Mr. Speaker, sir, at age 21, 22, and 23 coming out of school, qualified, will have the opportunity, sir, to put their qualifications to productive use. I'm not saying that their failure to have that opportunity is a justification to go into your house or anybody else's house with larceny in their heart. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are inviting on ourselves the most difficult of social and economic circumstances if we do not respond from this Parliament in a manner that is speaking directly to the concerns of the young people of Barbados. And if that is not where this Parliament is going, sir, then I don't want to be part of it. Now, Mr. Speaker, I say to you that in addition to that, one of the good things that we have done to try to solve some of these problems that confront us is to introduce again this question of planning gains. The last administration distinguished itself for asking the question, what is in it for me, the minister? A proposed investor by the name of Mr. Prescott comes to Barbados, and he asks for a meeting at high level and said, this is my proposal, this is what I would like to do. And before he can leave the room, he has been asked on 3 occasions, that's all well and good, but what you can get out of it? What you could do for me? Because the politics of the fatted calf, the politics, Mr. Speaker, sir, of slaughtering the fatted calf in the interest of friends, in the interest of self, in the interest of family of the Democratic Labour Party, sir, was the politics of the day. That is why I am not taking any pupillage from any of them, because I know from whence we came, and I know the struggle that we have had to undergo in the last 5 years to remove that stain from Barbados' image, not only in this region, but across the world. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, what have we replaced that with? The legislation I just referred to, sir, introduces planning gains into this country in a formal way, so that if an investor comes here and says that this is what he wants to do, it is open to the Prime Minister, it is open to the minister responsible for planning in this country to say to the investor, in addition to that which you propose to do, however, there are some communities in the neighboring area where there are some poor people that need some assistance in development. The development assistance may be, as we will see in the city of Bridgetown, that fish market improvement can take place. Put some money towards that. It may be that there are sporting facilities, recreational facilities in the parish of St. James, sir. When I became a member of Parliament 21 years ago, in my constituency there were 3 playing fields. None of them had on any light, none of them had on a pavilion. Through dint of labor and dedication to the people that put me there, I now can say that there are lights on all 3 of them, and I caused them to be there, sir. And I can say, Mr. Speaker, so that we got pavilions on 2, and there must be one down in Good Shepherd. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is where you can now use the investor's capital and his interest in the country to help the poor people, to stop them from conditions of poverty. Do I make myself clear to you, sir? That is what the legislation that we brought does. But we must go further. And this is why I take this opportunity to make a speech like this with respect to what is happening in St. Lucie. It brings me to the 3rd point I want to make. The point is, Mr. Speaker, sir, development, sir, must also as not just be about our investors and our tourists, it must be about our people. Services must come to rural Barbados in an equitable manner. When we conducted a by-election in St. John after the death of the last Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. John, who would have died in 2010 or 11, Mr. Speaker, it would be correct to say that there was not a post office in St. John. It would be correct to say there was not a post office at that time in St. Lucie either. That was in 2011. Not that long ago. But we were content as a country to know that you got the post office in Hotel, you got the post office in Oyster, you got the post office in Bridgetown. We forgot our neighbors in the north. That is why I understand and I associate myself with the passion of the Honourable Member for St. Lucie when he talks about the need, sir, to bring development, the need for us to bring an equitable amount of health care. It is not a good enough thing that in 2023, if you you take second night, that you've got to find your way all down to Bridgetown in order to find adequate levels of health care. It is an essential that the people of St. Lucie, sir, do not have to take 3 buses or 2 buses in order to get their little children to go to school when the day comes. These are the issues, the developmental issues, sir, that we must be thinking about when we are talking about the provision of services in the north, which is why I am happy to be part of a discussion that will bring a dental training college to the north of this island. Yes, it will have its tourism benefit. Yes, every person in that dental school, if they're coming from overseas, will be a tourist. Much like Ross University, you're going to be here for 9 months. Much like the University of the West Indies, you're going to be here for 9 months. And you're going to be eating food about the place. You're going to be walking about and socializing and drinking some drinks in the rum shops and the bars. And the ladies got to go and get their hair done. And all of that commercial activity helps the people. But we need, sir, to make sure that we consider and put at the top of our priority list the building out of infrastructure so that equality of opportunity exists for those people in northern parishes of the island. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to say this last point. I've served as tourism minister of this country. I have a concern. I do not know what language to utilize, but I ask all Barbadians to start to reflect on that which I can only describe as the need for there to be spatial balance in this country. We have seen Carlisle Bay with a few thousand people collected on one beach. We have seen beach chairs for as much sand as beach chairs can cover on Carlisle Bay. I have seen that progress up to Accra, where there's much beach chairs as sand can accommodate beach chairs on Accra Beach. I say that there are Barbadians who want to share that beach as well. I have experienced firsthand at the Pebbles in the constituency of the Honourable Member of St. Michael South. I intervened personally in a matter of a tension, not a dispute, I ain't gonna carry it to that level, but a tension between a visitor, a person who's providing the beach chairs, and a Barbadian. And the legitimate, in my view, the legitimate concern of the Barbadian, my money is good too. And if you're renting beach chairs, I should be able to get one too. You can't prioritize the visitor. No, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have not yet gotten to the point where this has become a major humbug in Barbados. But I caution, it has become a major humbug in Barcelona. It has become a major humbug all through Italy. It has become a major humbug, sir, in many parts of the Mediterranean. Mr. Speaker, sir, Barbados has to start to think in terms of spatial balance. How do we move the large amounts of tourists we attract to this island across this island for equitable opportunities commercially so that our people, wherever they are, wherever their businesses are, can access the tourist dollar? And equally, sir, how we remove the pressure ecologically in terms of our marine space, ecologically in terms of our beaches and the space to accommodate them, Mr. Speaker, sir. The pressure, sir, transportation-wise, How do we make sure we remove all concentration of activity in a few parts of this island and broaden the base? It is for that reason that I wholeheartedly support it. And I once again remind this Parliament that it is this government that only a few months ago would have opened a cruise pier in St. Peter. The reason for that, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that you can't have all the ships continue to arrive in the port of Bridgetown. That you've got to be able to now divert some up to the north so that business in the north can access opportunity as well. So that the people who are coming through the port will not be so many that Bridgetown itself and business in Bridgetown itself and transportation in Bridgetown itself cannot appropriately and satisfactorily accommodate them. But that you allow others to buy into opportunity and develop their own opportunities in other parts of the island. That is the equitable development that this country cries out for, Mr. Speaker, sir. And it is the equitable development that this country must give itself an opportunity to deliver to its people. Failing that, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are creating a recipe for disaster. It will become a recipe for social unrest and dissatisfaction. That cruise pier is of vital importance, not only to the people of St. Peter, but to the people of St. Lucie. This dental school, Mr. Speaker, sir, will become a fulcrum. It will become an opportunity around which more investment can focus. We are not only talking about St. Lucie here, sir. We are talking about national development. May I say to you, St. Lawrence Castle on the east coast, southeast coast, is going to soon open. Same problem. You know, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are going to have 422 hotel rooms in St. Lawrence Castle. And this country has wrapped itself up, two parties successively in government, song and dance and quarrel over St. Lawrence Castle and who going to open it, who going to build it, etc. You know, Mr. Speaker, sir, what is missing? You know what is missing? That there must be amenities to support the natural curiosity and the natural interest of the 422 rooms full of tourists who will be in that hotel every blessed night. So the restaurants cannot only be at the castle. The restaurants must be around the castle. In the same way that we have restaurants all through St. James. In the same way we have restaurants all through St. Lawrence Gap. Mr. Speaker, sir, there must be recreational activity like golf. But there is a golf course near the castle. It's down in St. James. Mr. Speaker, sir, there must be amenities that support the tourism investment and the tourism infrastructure. It is all well and good for us to say, well, they could go and take a drive because the island's small. But we have to remember, sir, that they're driving past people in St. Philip who want a share of the pie too, who want to feel that the tourism dollar impacts on them in a major way too, among whom the tourists must interact when they walk the streets. And therefore, the question of inclusion becomes an important part, an important and inescapable dimension, sir, of any conversation from my perspective on town planning and development. Mr. Speaker, sir, I had promised you that I would only speak to those 4 areas, and I do not want to break my promise to you. But I have shared that which lies in my heart and in my mind, sir, and I hope that I have not allowed what I think might be fertile seed to fall on infertile soil. I genuinely believe, sir, that this is an opportunity for us to raise the level of conversation on this vital matter of town planning, and I am indebted to you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity I have had to do such.
Honourable Member St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this resolution brought by the Honourable Member for St. George South, and I am told I need to be very short, sir, and I shall do so to the best of my ability. And I support this because this resolution is about development. It is about the opportunity for us to increase our trade in services using education as an export. It is our opportunity, it is our chance to to bring additional opportunities, not only to international students, but to the local market. So it's for these three reasons, development, trade, and opportunities, that I certainly stand to support this resolution. Sir, you perhaps, like many of us, know that for years, people have been leaving the shores of Barbados to go abroad to study. And it is time that Barbados, with the strength that we have in our education sector, and with our determination to try to continue to upgrade and sustain the quality of education, that we too be able to be not just the country that will send our children abroad, but also be the place where learners come to Barbados, both for education and for training. And this opportunity of the dental school gives us, sir, that kind of opportunity. And when we talk about using education as an export, sir, to help us in our development and our growth, this is whether we bring students here physically to our existing educational institutions. It is about whether we bring institutions here that will bring investment and foreign currency to this country and invest in this country and have a physical presence here. It is whether, sir, we allow access to our education services via online methods and approaches. It is whether, sir, we operate our schools, our universities, and our colleges in other countries. There are many different ways, and these are not the only ways in which we can see how we can make services in education more mobile and to move them around the world in a way that will allow us to bring exports. There is tremendous value, sir, in us having this dental school here and other facilities like this which are already here in Barbados. It gives us the opportunity for government and industry to work more closely together in the kinds of partnerships that can redound to the benefit of this country. In this case, the industry, which is the healthcare and other and related industries, sir. It gives us the opportunity to build global relationships as Barbados seeks to make sure that we are recognizing that our reputation as global citizens, as a country that is world-class, we need to continue to build those global partnerships. Sir, this opportunity brings us investment that will not only bring foreign currency, that will also bring jobs, because you need people to clean the place. You need people to be consultants with the place. You need people to be instructors at the place. And while a number of we expect that there will be some resources for teaching and instruction that may come from overseas, we expect that we will also be able to use some of our local resources to be able to fill some of the opportunities here. As the research that is being done in this facility and other medical facilities here are exploited, we will be able to monetize research, where it isn't just research for research's sake, but it is research that actually will help us to solve problems that we have here in Barbados and indeed the world, but that we are allowing Barbados to be a place where the research can take place so that we can then be able to use that to bring economic value, to create products, to create services, and to be able to serve the rest of the world. What is important, though, sir, is that as other dental schools and other medical facilities want to come to Barbados and indeed the Caribbean, there are certain things that we have to ensure. We have to ensure that the reputation of these institutions is of a level that will not take the reputation of Barbados with it should there be a fallout in that situation. We have had that experience here in Barbados, and we have to continue to ensure, we have to be vigilant and continue to ensure that these types of facilities come here not just for economic and profit, to make profit in many cases, as they do, but more fundamentally that they pay attention to the educational quality so that the recognition and the reputation of the institution and indeed of this country will remain significant. You know, sir, schools such as this must meet 11 significant criteria that we have here in Barbados through our Barbados Accreditation Council, and they also must meet the standards of CAM-HP. And what is CAM-HP? It is the Caribbean Accreditation Authority for Education in Medicine and Other Health Professions. And that is an agency that was set up under CARICOM back in, I believe it was 2003, to ensure that we are able to set the right kinds of standards, to make sure that we accredit the programs that are coming in by institutions such as these, and to provide some level of assurance of quality to the public and to the stakeholders and to the students. And the Barbados Accreditation Council has been working with those institutions that are already set up here, and we are working very closely with those that are to come to ensure that indeed the quality of education is paramount, to make sure that students and others are not being exploited unscrupulously by those who would seek to make profit rather than be anchored in a sound education. And to ensure, sir, that the reputation of Barbados remains one of which we are very proud. Now, sir, I did promise that I would be short. So as I speak to this opportunity for us to expand our exports in the services of education, and as I speak about the value that I know it will bring to this country, and as I speak about the need for us to look at accreditation and to make sure that there are reputable institutions that will deliver quality, I think the final thing I would wish to speak about, sir, is the fact that data is going to be important as we continue to build out this sector and build out this export as a service. Because in the very same way that we will collect statistics on tourism and people who come for various reasons, if we are truly interested in building out education and the services of education as an export, we also need to be tracking what is going on in that sector and be able to ensure that what we intend for it to do is indeed, that it is indeed doing so in contributing to the development and the growth of this country. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we continue to see education as more than how we educate our country, but we have to see our education sector as a part of how we educate the world in all the many ways in which we do it. And sir, it is with that kind of optimism and that kind of hope and with that type of an intention that I support this particular resolution for the use of this land in St. Lucie for the purpose of the dental institution. I am much obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member St. Michael South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will give perhaps the most brief, or briefest, I don't know, speech I've ever given in Parliament to date. But so I want to commend this resolution brought by the Honourable Member for St. George South. And I also want to begin by saying, as the Honourable Member who just spoke, that partnerships is going to be, the idea of partnership is extremely important. And I say partnership today, sir, in the context of international partners, whether it be in schools or business, international agencies coming to Barbados and doing good. But I also mean it, sir, in the context of our own local development in relation to private enterprise in Barbados. And I say so, sir, because I'm cognizant that there is the possibility and potential, perhaps even propensity for distorted development to occur. And by that I mean that as one aspect of a society develops, that another aspect may not develop at the same rate. And we often see that, sir, in relation to a geographic spread. The city may develop, in some cases, faster than rural areas. There's a distortion. But my concern here, sir, is a demographic distortion. And I am thankful that we are having a dental school come, but it reminds me, sir, of two things which I will say and then take my seat. So I'm reminded as a boy when I was at Wilkie Cumberbatch Primary School, there used to be a program in the schools where the dentists, I think, or dental assistants would come, and while I was at primary school, they would come and they would evaluate your teeth. And they would either try to help you on the spot or they would recommend you for further assistance. I do not know what's happened to that program. But I do know as a boy growing up in the Pine for myself and for many other young children not born into means, that this was the only contact that we had with the dentist. And it taught us two things. First of all, that you needed to, at the time get your teeth fixed, but that this bigger idea that you have to pay attention to dental hygiene, it was really the only time you would go to a dentist. And I would like to know what's happened to that program and to urge, not necessarily the government, though the government obviously has to take the lead, but the private dentists. I urge the private dentists to do something for people in this country, especially the children in poor communities who may never have the opportunity to visit a dentist. And I don't know what's happened to the program, but I do think that the private dentists should make a greater effort to help so that we could stop this, this distorted development, I think, in that sense. And then my other point is in relation, sir, I said it would be brief. My other point is in relation to persons with disabilities. Now, we spent the last year or so consulting with persons with disabilities. We did, led by the Honourable Member for St. James North, who did brilliant work. We did over 60 meetings to discuss what was necessary in that space. And as I speak about this distorted development, it is clear to me that the disabled as a demographic is extremely underserved when it comes to dental hygiene. And I heard from many persons, sir, who, deliberately, sir, as they came to meetings and gave personal stories about, the trauma as a parent in taking a child with a disability, especially an autistic child, to the dentist, because sometimes you have to sedate that child. And in some cases, you have to put the child completely to sleep. And while it is difficult for the average person to go to the dentist, because dentists, let's face it, are not sort of inexpensive undertaking. For a person with a disability, a parent of a child with a disability, it's even more expensive because to sedate that child costs. And so while I believe that this dental school is going to be important, sir, I believe that our local dentists have a responsibility to help persons with disabilities, many of whom are dealing with difficult circumstances and severe dental issues because they've never been able to afford the dentist. And because the cost associated with dealing with those particular persons is even more expensive. And so, sir, I just wanted to use this opportunity to address those two simple but I think very important things. That those who may be a little bit less well off, those of us who went to schools, like the Honourable Member for St. Michael's, South Central, and myself, many others in this place, who use that opportunity to interact with a dentist, but also on behalf of persons with disabilities. I'm calling on the private sector to do a little more, because yes, the government has to lead, but the private sector, that is what partnership is about. I'm calling on the private sector, sir, to come forward, to allow persons with disabilities properly registered through the National Disabilities Unit, to accept that they have a legitimate registration, and to do something for them. If it is a discount, if they enter into a partnership with the government so the government carries some of the costs, perhaps at a reduced rate. But there are too many people with disabilities in this country who are dealing with difficult dental issues because they do not have access. And while the dental facilities are there, access is more than just having a physical space. Access includes your capacity to be able to go in and to pay. And sir, that is something that I would like to see addressed, sir. I commend the bill, I commend all who spoke, particularly the Honourable Member for St. Lucie, and who just spoke so brilliantly, and of course, the Honourable Member for St. James Central. I want to thank all who spoke before me, sir. I think this is an important piece of legislation, but I think the conversation on helping children particularly who are dealing with dental issues needs to be expanded to include the poor and persons with disabilities. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this resolution. I smiled when I saw that this particular matter would be before us today because it brings back very fond memories of my time as Minister with responsibility for investment. It is one of the examples of what I see, and I have seen since 2018 when this government came to service, as one of the key indicators of the fact that Barbados is back. We, in many investment fora, coined that particular phrase, and it may sound a bit glib. It may sound like it's easy to say, but it would only sound that way to people who did not have to deal with the fallout of the fact that, as the Honourable Member for St. Lucie highlighted in his brilliant intervention, it would only seem that way to those who did not have to deal with the fallout of the fact that the world had turned its back on this little island. The world had considered that there was nothing to see here, that there was nothing going on in Barbados. Some of the youngsters in my constituency and in St. James South and others would put it, "Nothing ain't going on about hey for we." That was not just the local community feeling among some of those young people, but that was the global feeling with respect to this country. And, you know, in 2018, this government hit the ground running, sprinting, speeding. When it was at Belmont, we used to say scratch off. To be able to pull back some of the good spirit, some of the good intent, some of the interest in this country from an investment perspective. So in having investment conversations with people abroad, had to have some very uncomfortable conversations. There was a particular gentleman that we were seeking to engage because he had expressed interest in Barbados. And, you know, I really believe that part of the role of Export Barbados, Invest Barbados, Enterprise Growth Fund Limited, in particular, is not to sit down and cross your arms and wait for business to come. We are small. If we don't get up and see about ourselves, nobody's going to feel for us. And so a part of what we did at the time was to reach out again and to people who had expressed an earlier interest in Barbados and see, well, are you still interested in bringing this particular development? Are you still interested in starting this project? And time after time, especially in those first few days in June of 2018, it was quite disheartening because there are people who said, if we have to go through what we have gone through in the last 10 years, if we have to deal with some of the dishonesty, if we have to deal with some of the duplicitousness that confronted us when we sought to invest in Barbados, if we have to deal with some of the uncertainty around incentives and around planning, we are not coming back to that jurisdiction. And so we had to set to work through looking at the incentives framework, and I know work is still ongoing in that regard, through looking at the planning and development legislation and many other ways, but also through looking at the integrity and anti-corruption and all of these things. We had to send a message to the international community that we, Barbados, that we are serious people, and that we would not allow the previous 10 years to define who this country and its people would come to be known as or would come to be remembered as. I start there, sir, because there were those who sat back and said, let's see what y'all do. We hear you, but let's see what y'all do. And we understand that, and we showed them that we would be and could be quite aggressive on transforming that investment climate. But there were those, sir, like the proponents of this investment, who displayed what I called persistent investment interests. In other words, they showed that they had confidence in the government that had come to service, had confidence that things would be turned around, but also had confidence in the people of Barbados, in the project of Barbados. That they believed that Barbados is the place to be, not just to be able to have a successful enterprise, but to be able to be in this place that is at the cutting edge of global investment. And I think for many who do not perhaps have the opportunity to sit in these conversations, let us not underestimate the high esteem in which this country is held, because it matters. It doesn't matter because the ministers in cabinet like to put on a jacket and fly around and sit down in meetings because that's what ministers do. That's not why it matters, and that's not why they go to meetings. It matters because we had a decade where nobody wanted to hear from us. Nobody wanted to sit in a room and say, oh, I met the Minister of Environment, or I met the minister at the time it was for the blue economy, one of the first ministries ever created of its kind. And we had the privilege of being able to sit with that minister and discuss issues of marine development and protection. The reason that Barbados, the reason that members of the cabinet, the reason that technical officials have to go out and represent what we stand for and what we believe is because if that is not done, nobody's coming here to check for you and look for you and feel for you. That is the work of engagement. The work of global engagement is about making sure that investments come, not just to be able to say this is a $200 million investment, or to be able to brag and say this is a $300 million investment, but to be able to say, how will this benefit the people of St. Lucie? How will this benefit the people of Barbados? How will this benefit children in schools who need to have dental care? How will this benefit young people with disabilities who need access to this kind of health care, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael South just importantly pointed out to us? And so the point of all of this engagement is not to be able to sign on a dotted line and pat ourselves on the back, or for government to pat itself on the back. The point of these engagements is to be able to secure the confidence and to convert that investment confidence, investor confidence, into jobs, into infrastructural development, and into the momentum that will mean that growth, job-led, inclusive growth, returns to this country. And so, having been a part of this initial conversation when it started, having been a part of and witnessed the persistence of this group of people who said, look, yes, we might be able to go somewhere else that has the land available today, but Barbados is the place to be in matters of this nature. Barbados is the place to be to engage in the education sector, because we've seen what you did with Ross University and we've seen what you've done with others. Barbados is the place to be with respect to medical care, because we see the plans that you have for being able to have universal tertiary health care and to be able to get to that point. And so this is the kind of investment that from the very beginning said to me, people are believing in Barbados again. And this, notwithstanding what we heard from the member who led from St. George South, of all the various difficulties, it was difficult to be able to find appropriate land for an investment of this nature. And when I had responsibility for investment, we considered, we thought about it. I will admit it kept me up at night. The area that was identified close to the University of the West Indies was not appropriate from a planning perspective and so many other perspectives. And these people who wanted to be able to come and say, look, this is not just about building a dental school. This is about being able to engage with local dentists. This is about being able to give internships so people can practice. This is about being able to provide services to the surrounding community. This is about being able to develop the community in which we operate. They were persistent. And that persistence said to me that there was something, not just for them, but for many others, about the quality of Barbadian life and values that they wanted to be a part of. And so I'm happy to see that this particular investment goes forward with a view to incorporate all of those benefits to the community, because ultimately that is what this kind of investment is about. Now, the Honourable Member for St. James Central, who spoke before me, is causing me to go where I had not intended, because he made such clear and precise references to the planning and development reform that I had the honor of leading starting in 2019. And I agree with him that when matters like this come before us, they show us, they tell us, they indicate to us that we need to stay focused on this business of having a balance of development that does not just relate to geographical balance, but a balance of development that also relates to the purpose for development and land use and infrastructure, whether that purpose is housing, commercial development, social care, including health and education, but also health and education as industries in themselves, but also whether that is recreation and being able to maintain the ecological balance that is so necessary for small islands like ours. And so when that Planning and Development Act was passed in 2019 and then became the subject of an amendment in 2020, it was always clear and understood that it will have to be accompanied by a very specific and precise change management process that we initiated at the time. I say that because I am following on from that honourable member's caution and statement to us that development is a continuum, it is a journey. And while one can pass legislation, it does not begin and end, as we all know, with the passing of legislation. The change management that we at the time identified the resources for and that I understand is now taking place is crucial, so that those who are tasked with executing, with administering the Planning and Development Act have the wherewithal to do so. I emphasize this because I want us all to understand, every Barbadian to understand, that you don't pass legislation today and tomorrow you find yourself ready and in shape in every instance to administer that legislation. In a country of our size, with resources thin on the ground, sometimes what is also required, and is required, you will find, sir, I am sure, across every reform or transformation exercise in which this government is engaged, including in the education sector, including in the housing sector, including in the agriculture sector, for sure in the people empowerment sector, that institutional change has to take place. The institutions that are going to be responsible for this have to be made to be fit for purpose in order to carry on and carry out the work of transformation. And so I'm happy that that change management process is continuing. I also note that the e-planning system that was also launched at that time when I had the honor to lead that department is also evolving, and meaning that there is more convenience for everyone who has to interact with the system. And so those things continue, and I really, from a distance, from this perspective, feel very proud of the Planning and Development Department and the officers for the work that they continue to do, and of course for the minister who now leads the sector. But sir, I could not touch on this particular piece of legislation and this reform process without returning to something that is unresolved. And it occurs to me more and more every day as the hurricane season has started. It occurs to me more and more every day as we from time to time see through the media or otherwise the plight of some Barbadians whose homes are not in livable or in stable condition. And I say stable because we know that in the Scotland district there are some stability issues that are related to the topography and the terrain, and that some Barbadians who find themselves there have to be concerned with whether their homes will remain in the same position they were in when they went to sleep the night. Now, there was contemplated at the time of that legislation being passed a system whereby a building code and therefore certificates of occupancy would be included as a part of the regulation of how people build and how people live, and therefore the security with which they live. Now, sir, I believe that sometimes, and I can see, and I know that this government is not afraid of difficult conversations. Several difficult conversations are happening now, and they are necessary conversations. Similarly, this question of whether a dwelling should pass a test of occupancy once it is constructed is one to which I think we should return. In the question of the water sector, rainwater harvesting, making sure that households have water storage available, and in that entire discussion, there is the conversation about a plumbing code. But I don't know how you can introduce a plumbing code without a building code, unless the only thing you put in the house is plumbing. Any plumbing code would have to be a part of an agreed piece of legislation that addresses the matter of a building code, especially for large commercial properties where people have to, which the public must frequent, but in particular for homes, for houses, to make sure that in the context of being vulnerable to hurricanes and other kinds of natural disasters, that when you as a contractor finish building a home for an individual, for old lady that, or for a young person that put all their dollars and cents together and count out all their money and say, yes, this is what I have to build this house, that you have a responsibility to make sure that that house is safe and livable, and that it is able to meet all of the requirements in a 2023, 2025, 2030 Barbados that allow people to live well. Not just to be in the elements, but to be able to live well. And so, I challenge us to return to that legislation to see the extent to which we can proclaim the sections that are relevant to having a building code, to making sure that we go the full distance, as the Honourable Member for St. James Central has entreated us to do in his remarks this morning, to ensure that we go the full distance with respect to occupancy, making sure that people are safe, and so on. My final 2 points, sir, have to do with more general issues that this resolution throws up. Sir, every generation has its major reform that it has to undertake. And, you know, I think perhaps one of the things to which Barbadians are unaccustomed, have become unaccustomed, is the issue of a transformational government. Because we had this decade of people just treading water and really just trying to keep their head up. And really, while they're trying to keep their head up, the rest of Barbados under them, you know, because they're clamoring upon the shoulders of poor Barbadians that were drowning. But I believe what we are seeing now is a Barbados that is so unaccustomed to seeing real transformation that we don't know what to do. And I understand the tension. We are seeing proposed transformation in the education sector. We are seeing a level of consultation, Mr. Speaker, in my, I was going to call the number, but I don't want to disabuse people of certain notions of my youth. But in my several decades, I have not seen this level of consultation with any government in the Western Hemisphere. And I feel that we are uncomfortable, and sometimes discomfort is good. You know, remember for St. Michael South, and others are trying to get in shape for Kadooment Day. And the only way that those muscles are going to grow is if they experience some discomfort. You got to break them down and build them back up. Discomfort leads to growth. So I think that we should get comfortable with the idea of discomfort. I think we should get comfortable with the idea of disagreeing, because disagreeing doesn't mean that we have to become disagreeable with each other. Let all ideas contend, but at the end of the day, we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the populations that we are here to serve and to protect. And so I have always thought that every generation of a government would have its major transformation that it had to undertake. But it turns out that this particular generation of this government has several transformations that it has to undertake at once, because guess what? Nobody's time is not waiting for us. But I do feel deeply that the one that we are not paying sufficient attention to, and believe me, sir, I know that every ball is in the air at once, and perhaps this ball is one that will be thrown up later. But land reform, land rights, land use are not getting enough attention. The extent to which ownership of land, housing, I see the attention it's getting. We hear about all of the targets, but the question of whether, of the extent to which we will move that needle along, such that every Barbadian ceases to become a tenant in their own country in the true sense of that expression. Every civilization that has seen true development and transformation has done so in part through the issue of land reform. Who owns it? Who has access to it? What are the tools available to people to manage and plan their estate, to pass on ownership to future generations, to be able to bring about intergenerational wealth and prosperity? We have to get this issue of land regulation and reform right. It is a big part of the unfinished business of the ideology of the Labour Party that causes us to be here. And sir, on another occasion, I will be able to expound more on what I believe must be some of the land reform targets for a 2023 Barbados. But I want to finish with a question, really, to the honourable member who led this landmark resolution, really, that allows for this very important investment. I mean, sometimes we say investment and it sounds like it's about money, but this is also a very important social investment. This is also a very important physical and infrastructural investment for the community in St. Lucie. But for the minister who led this very important resolution. And I really, in my question, I'm encouraging him to explain to us and be clear to us and answer for us, because I know that it is on the minds of Barbadians, the issue of the business of compulsory acquisition. And I put that out there because in all of this discomfort that we're having with certain issues, let us address the discomfort. There is an extent to which the notion of compulsory acquisition does not rest well on people's bosoms. We understand that in particular where there are issues of public safety, so for example, the culverts in George Street, where when the little children are walking in from school, they don't have any space to walk because private enterprises have not encroached, but certainly have taken up all of the available space. And so if the government were to say we need to compulsorily acquire the sliver of land that will allow us to build up those sidewalks and culverts in George Street, then one would understand. For issues that, for matters of public interest, public safety, one understands that if I have to, for example, build a reservoir that is going to mean that a community has access to water where they were previously water insecure, we understand. The question of the compulsory acquisition of private land for private investment purposes is one that perhaps people will have questions about. It is clearly and obviously within the law and within the notions of eminent domain. But I think that we do not do service to ourselves as a society that has to evolve if we fail to make this matter clear. I do know that there are other tools that are available. But I think that it is fitting to be able to say under what circumstances that facilitation goes beyond simply allowing an investment to happen and the government taking an interest in having an investment of this nature, of this scope, of this potential benefit to the country, causing it to occur through the role or through the process of compulsory acquisition. I do not think that it is, I don't think that it is something that we should shy away from. To be able to make it clear, I think that we perhaps might want to reinforce that this path is only taken in cases where there is no other path that makes itself apparent to the state in facilitating an investment of this scope and with this potential benefit to the country. But I raise it because we have seen, and sir, as we always say in this place, we govern not for ourselves and this time, but we govern for the future. And we certainly govern based on our experience in the past. And I have seen a former administration led by the other side, to the extent that there's an other, where they compulsorily acquired land for purposes that they said would be for the benefit and that we were to take for granted would be for the benefit of Barbadians, but then failed to develop that land to its true investment potential. And even if merely from a natural justice, morality kind of perspective, and I say this as a layperson in legal matters, but one has a natural inclination to justice. I would hope that those who occupy this chamber have a natural inclination to justice. And so one might think, well, if you took this land from me, compensated me for it, yes, but took this land from me with the expectation that it would be developed in this way, then you have a duty to ensure that it's developed in this way. And so I know of cases of a former administration that did not fulfill that end of the agreement. And arguably, land that could have otherwise been developed by that person or just held by that person for future generations was used ostensibly for one purpose and never met its full potential. I say these things, I pose this question, because I really believe that Barbadians are ready to hear a bit more on, and are ready to start to feel a sense of comfort that this business of compulsory acquisition is a last resort approach. And it is a last resort approach when what one stands to lose for Barbados is far too great, and so some action must be taken. But I also gather that there are other kinds of tools that might also be available to the state to be able to facilitate these kinds of investments, and I would welcome an explanation in this regard. Sir, I support this resolution. I support this project. I feel happy for the member for St. Lucie and for the people of St. Lucie. I feel optimistic that we are starting to approach a balance of development geographically, but that we are also starting to approach the balance of development that the Honourable Member for St. James South pointed us towards. St. Michael South pointed us towards, that is about making sure that everyone has access, all have access, and to be able to give visibility to the groups of people, whether they are living in St. Lucie or whether they are living all across Barbados but have particular challenges in accessing dental care. I feel confident that we are approaching that balance of development. And with those words, sir, I support this resolution.
Member St. Joseph.
Speaker, I beg to move that we do now suspend the proceedings of the chamber until 10 to 3.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 10 to 3 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 10 minutes to 3 p.m.